This video is brought to you by Hit Point Press and their Big Bad Booklet series. Hello and welcome back to The Gallant Goblin. Here we've got the next big platinum box from Beadle Grimm's. This one is Icewind Rime of the Frostmaiden. And it's not just this box, it's also this box and this giant poster tube. If you're not familiar with Beadle Grimm's, they're a small company of friends that started just a couple of years ago to create high-end editions of official D&D adventures. The boxes include the adventure itself, plus all sorts of extra content and new art, new encounters, new pre-gen characters, plus just all sorts of surprise goodies to enhance the tactile experience you can have while playing D&D. Most of the material is tied directly into the adventure, but some of it can be reused in other games. And this time, extra care was made to tie the various aspects of this box together. You'll see what I mean shortly. And these days, they often sell different versions of their boxes. The Platinum Editions are limited to 1,000 copies, while others are just limited by their supply chain and demand. We're going to show you what's in the Platinum Edition here, but we'll also highlight what's in the Silver Edition, which is also available. The Platinum Edition of Icewind Dale was $499 before any discounts, but has already sold out. The Silver Edition is still available and costs $175. Plus, some of the material in these boxes does get pulled out and sold individually in their store, so if you see something you like, but several $100s blows up your gaming budget, it's still worth checking out their store to see if they're selling just that awesome chain necklace or shark medallion that caught your eye. We want to thank Beadle Grimm's for sending us this set to review with you. So let's start by opening these boxes up and seeing if I can make it all fit on our dining table. First, we have a poster tube full of battle maps, a guide and table of contents, a set of 20 pre-painted WizKids Icons of the Realms minis from Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden, a series of map handouts of the 10 towns, 4 bonus encounters, the adventure separated into booklets, 5 pre-generated characters to use in the adventure, a series of in-world documents, a custom GM screen, bonus images and handouts including the actual Rime of the Frostmaiden, 60 character cards, 48 art images to show your players, 4 snow-themed reversible map tiles, an Idle Champions goodie and a Yeti-type companion for use in the Adventurers League games, character secret cards, 5 pieces of hardware, and a Test of the Frostmaiden scorecard. Let's start with the most important thing, the adventure itself. Since the very first Beadle Grimm's box, they provided the adventure itself in booklet form. And this is really handy for a number of reasons. If you're GMing somewhere besides your own home, you don't have to lug the entire book with you if you only need one chapter. Also, it allows you to have more than one book open at a time, so you can be referring to your stat blocks in the appendix over here while having the actual encounter block and all the descriptions from chapter 1 over here, for instance. So this adventure is broken up into 6 books. First, we have the introduction here and the first half of chapter 1 detailing some of the 10 towns. Book 2 here has the second half of chapter 1. Next is chapter 2 about the Icewind Dale region. Then we have chapters 3, 4, and 5. Then chapters 6 and 7. And finally, we have the appendix, which has the bestiary, magic items, and a lot more. Now, you may be asking, what is this adventure even about? Well, deep beneath the glaciers of the Arctic North in a land known as Icewind Dale lies a powerful secret. This is a secret that you and your adventuring party desire, but so do others, namely the mighty and mad wizards of the Arcane Brotherhood. Who uncovers these ancient secrets will determine the fate of Icewind Dale and its 10 towns, and hopefully deliver the denizens of the land from the Frostmaiden's everlasting night. Icewind Dale is an adventure for levels 1 through 12, and it features a rather ominous, horror-themed tone, so it's a bit of a departure from many of the recent campaigns from Wizards of the Coast. Now let's see what maps we have this time around. B&G maps always come in a variety of styles. First, we have this series of general-purpose tiles that you can use over and over again in this adventure and others, as long as there's snow on the ground. Each of these tiles is 11 by 22 inches and double-sided, and they fold up for easy storage. On one side of the tiles, you have a snowy outdoor scene with trees, a cave entrance, some fallen logs, some precarious-looking ice, and a lake. The other side has empty buildings and roads. You can easily mix and match the various sides to achieve the game board you need for each particular encounter. You can arrange them to make one big map that comes in at 44 by 22 inches, or arrange them in whatever configuration makes sense for your encounter. Since the buildings are empty, you can use some of the scatter terrain you may have collected from various WizKids 4D settings and Warlock tile sets, or Terrain Crate, or Dwarven Forge, or Battle Systems Papercraft, or whatever you have lying around. And they'll handle wet erase markers as well if you want to draw your own additions. These tiles are fantastic, and you'll definitely want to keep them handy for your Icewind Dale campaigns. Next, we have our campaign maps. First, and maybe most importantly, we have our big single-sided canvas map of Icewind Dale suitable for framing. This one is 24 by about 33.5 inches. Now this is the same map as the paper folded map at the back of the regular Icewind Dale book. Of course, this one is just on a nicer canvas. Now on the back of that regular map from the book, we had our little maps of the 10 towns, and Beadle Grimm has given us our own map here on high quality texture paper stock, so you can display both of these maps at the same time. This one is about 21 by 30 inches. Now the Platinum box also includes another map of Icewind Dale that's in a different art style. This one is actually done by Devin Rue, who you may know from the map she does for Critical Role. This one is actually considered an in-world document that can be given to the players when their characters attain a map of the region, maybe in East Haven Ferry in Chapter 1, or by one of the 10 town speakers at the beginning of Chapter 3. This map measures 14 by 22 inches. Our other canvas map is a gorgeous one of the Netherese Necropolis from Chapter 7 of the adventure. This is the player version of the map without the points of interest, so you can safely hang it up on the wall for your players when the time is right and have your GM version of the map handy in D&D Beyond or the booklet. It's 19 by 30.5 inches. Now, this map displays the Grove, or as it's called in the book, the Frozen Grove. It's part of a much larger complex called the Caves of Hunger in Chapter 6. In the book, we get an enormous map of the entire complex. Printing out the whole thing would require a pretty massive table, but this is the location of the map where the climactic fight is likely to happen, so it's good to have a map for it. This square map is 24 inches long. On the back, we have Lartha's study. I always have trouble with these names. This encounter takes place in Chapter 7, and it's another important climactic encounter, to say the least. Shockingly, there's no map provided for this room in the book, so this is one of the ones that the B&G folks put together themselves. If you have maybe Hallister's lab set from WizKids, this would be a good place to use it. You know, this is an abandoned study just filled with all sorts of stuffs. Our next map here is 24 by 30 inches long. On the front, we have again the Caves of Hunger. This is locations 27, H27, 28, and 29. So we had the Caves of Hunger before, that massive dungeon complex in Chapter 6. There's 39 areas in that section, in that dungeon in all, and this map includes 3 of those areas, the east and west observation platforms and the Drow outpost. So your party's gonna probably encounter a Drow mage and his guards in these rooms as they're staging a big Drow expedition further into the complex. And on the back, we have the Grim Skull Throne Room. This location appears in Chapter 5, and this map depicts a section of the larger map of the Grim Skull Fortress. Specifically here, you get sections G7 and G8, the Throne Room and the Queen's Bedchamber. Now, this is an important location, as this is where the characters are probably going to encounter Auril in person. Next, we have a set of 6 maps covering all 3 levels of Zardarok's Sunblight's fortress. So Zardarok is a Duragar, which is a gray, corrupted dwarf from the Underdark, and he aims to wipe out the 10 towns with a giant constructed something to make a new home for the Duragar on the surface. His fortress is detailed in Chapter 3 of the adventure, and the players at some point will probably feel compelled to invade it. Here is our first level of the map, is 24 by 30 inches. It's called the Ice Gate level. These maps are just generic enough that you can find ways to reuse them in other adventures, I think. The second level is a bit larger and requires putting 2 of the maps together, making a 48 by 30 inch map in all. This is the command level, which contains living quarters for Zardarok and his sons, in addition to halls for training and dining. And the third level here may be one of the biggest map projects that Beadle Grimm has taken on to date. The Forge level here spans 3 whole maps, and you're going to need a very large table if you want to put all these out at once, as that's 72 by 30 inches. That's 6 feet long. And note that this is one of those times when Beadle Grimm has taken a very plain utilitarian map and made it not only functional but beautiful and thematic. Instead of a plain stone structure, this one includes lighting, decoration, and furniture, all of course taken from the text of the adventure. Another very handy little addition to the box are these full-page maps of the 10 towns. They're taken from the big map that we showed you earlier. Each map has the most important landmarks in the city marked to help your players know where to start. You have locations like the town hall, the main tavern, some important shops, the location of the city gates, for instance. And some of these maps are in the landscape orientation like this, and others are in the portrait orientation. And note that they have different scales as well down here. And they also have the handy compass rose over here like this, so you can kind of see what side is up and what the scale is for each map. So I decided to wear the coat as a little costume because, you know, this is Icewind Dale and I want to kind of make it feel lived in, but it's actually really cold in here today, so I'm kind of glad I made this decision. But anyway, let's talk about our 5 pre-generated characters. So these are designed to help your players just hit the ground running with stats and backgrounds and story hooks and even a special little item to set them apart. And to help with role-playing, each character has, you know, the character trait and an ideal and a bond and a flaw. And they also come with one of those aforementioned secrets that we talked about with those little cards. And I'll leave those for your players to discover here for these characters. But first, we have Hrethfar Iron Striker. Hrethfar Iron Striker. He is, or she is possibly, a dwarf cleric of Moradin who chose the Forge domain. Hrethfar was born into Clan Battlehammer at the base of Kelvin's Cairn and grew up learning how to work the forge, but eventually they were called to arms by Moradin to, of course, strike down evildoers with their warhammer. And Hrethfar comes ready with a spell scroll of augury. Next, we have Faroline. It's a half-elf druid and a swirling mix of anger and empathy. Faroline grew up in isolation as a hermit after some unstated betrayal by their mother, which you and your GM will have to discover. While Faroline fights for the greater good, they're sometimes finding themselves driven by a bloodlust instead, and that seems to be unattached to any other lofty ambition. Faroline starts with a potion of fire breath, which seems appropriate. Next, we have Zeralez, who's a drow rogue, though they never really felt at home in drow communities for reasons which I'll let you discover on your own. Zeralez had to make a lot of tough decisions in their youth, decisions which they may now wish to redeem themselves for, but life has taught them that trust must be earned, and sometimes those hard decisions have to be made. Zeralez starts with a bottle of oil of slipperiness. And next we have Chich, who is a human sorcerer who grew up an orphan on the streets, and luckily their innate arcane abilities as a sorcerer with control over the elements of the weather gave them the upper hand they needed to be able to survive in a cold place like the 10 Towns or Southern California here. They start with Bracers of Shield, which lets them cast Shield once per short rest. And finally, we have Olinoka Oliganthakula. Ganathakula, there we go. And this is a Goliath barbarian from Wormdoom Crag up in the mountains above Icewind Dale. Olinoka is driven by a need to explore the untamed wilderness and a need to constantly surpass and do better and make more accomplishments, forever pushing themselves forward. And they start with a tribal totem that lets them cast the Longstrider spell once a day. In the past, we've had some art for each of these characters on the GM screen and on the bonus encounter booklets, but this time it seems like we don't have that. While it was certainly cool to be able to see your own characters depicted on the GM screen here, this way at least the character's appearance and gender is entirely in the hands of the player, so that's pretty cool. So let's take a look at what is on the GM screen now. On the exterior of the screen, we have some scenes from across the Icewind Dale region, along with one of the sayings of the Reged nomads: the land respects strength alone, the strong flourish, and the weak perish. The screen is made up of 4 vertical panels, as you can see. Each one is 8.5 by 11 inches. And let's go ahead and turn it around to show you the important bits. There you go. So inside we have a lot of useful information taken from the adventure. The leftmost panel over here has our character guide with pronunciations, which is particularly handy in an adventure that features names like Drist Duerden, Arviatris. Go watch our video of Arviatris by clicking the link at the corner of your screen. We also have Bjornhild Solvigsdotter and Kapanuk and Thun Lukalaga. There we go. And I know all of you are just 100% behind the way I pronounce things on this channel. And if not, leave me a comment down below. The next panel over here gives us our random wilderness encounters, and you have the details about all of these can be found in the book called Chapter 2 Icewind Dale, and it's on pages 7 through 14 of that booklet if you want to get the details when they do roll up these encounters. And you also have the environmental rules for extreme cold and frigid water and slippery ice and thin ice, as well as some of those rumors that your party might hear when they're out in the 10 towns hanging out in taverns. And finally, we've got a little table about the various Riged tribes of the region. The next panel has our very handy map of Icewind Dale, as well as the travel time between various destinations, depending on the party's mode of transport. And the last panel over here has our always present and always useful summary of the 5E conditions. Once again, we also have the art pulled from the book and placed on these nice pieces of heavyweight paper like this, so you can display them to your players. I love these because rarely do you get to show the players the art from the book unless you're playing on something like Roll20. And here you get 24 pages of art, so that's 48 pieces altogether, and they're just designed to hang over the GM screen perfectly like this. And they do this time have inside here, you can see the name of the image and the artist and the location of the image in the book, all printed on the inside. So when you're reading through the adventure during a game and you see an image, you most likely have it to share on one of these cards, unless it's a monster or NPC, in which case we have our new set of 61 monster encounter cards. And these are very similar to the art, and they're meant to just hang over your GM screen like this so that your players can see the awesome art right here, but on the back, you also get all the stat blocks and lore information you need to run the encounters with the creatures. And these are super helpful not only in making the combat encounters run more smoothly, but also just in enhancing the imagination of your players in the same way that minis do. Here is the full set of cards featured in this box. As you can see, we have everything from very specific NPCs and boss villains to very common monsters that you may see in every adventure, like the Winter Wolf and the Tarrasque. And we actually received 61 cards in our box with a duplicate Kingsport the Awakened Albino Blind Penguin. I'm not sure if everyone will end up with 2 of these or not, but there are worse ones to get duplicates of. Speaking of those bonus encounters, let's see what they have in store for us this time. Each little bonus encounter has its own booklet with a full page of art on the front and 2 pages of content on the inside. The first one here is called Burnt Ends and was written by our buddy Justice Armin with art by Irina Kuzmina. This one is designed for 4th level or higher characters. It can take place anywhere in Icewind Dale and uses the Arcane Brotherhood pen here. And this is a new addition, a new twist to the Platinum Edition. They're weaving together the bonus encounters and the hardware pieces, which I think is pretty awesome. This is exactly what I want to see from these boxes, more just interaction between the various component pieces. So anyway, in this first booklet, in this first adventure here, the party sees an explosion in the distance, and they come across a scene of just fiery chaos and carnage. And the only person who survived is a manic-looking gnome wearing manacles. And if the party does a little investigation, they discover that he's actually a serial arcane arsonist being taken to a prison in Icewind Dale. And he's also, of course, a member of the Arcane Brotherhood with the pen to prove it. And it's up to the party to decide what to do with him. But there is information provided so that he can be a companion for the party for quite a while. There are even 3 sub-encounters that can occur while he's traveling with the party. And it's up to them to decide if he remains with the party for some time, or if he's set free, or if he escapes, or if he is finally taken to prison to pay for his crimes. And rules are provided for a set of manacles of spell dampening. But in the end, the party should end up with his Arcane Brotherhood pen, which you can see here. The pen is very hefty and utilizes a locking clutch. It's not immediately evident how to open it, so let me show you if you're not familiar with these. Just take your thumbnails and put them between the outer head of the pen and the pen itself and lift it up until it comes off like this. And that's our Arcane Brotherhood pen. Next, we have a horror-themed encounter for characters from 5th to 7th level called the Blood Knight, also by Justice Arman, with art by Mark Bem. This encounter introduces the Blood Knight, a time in which Aurel's magic casts this rogue red band of red light across the sky, and it creates a red blizzard on an otherwise clear night. And the red blizzard is probably scary enough in and of itself, but what the blizzard hides is what's really scary. On the Blood Knight, whatever town or settlement is the subject of the red blizzard is set upon by a horde of horrific frozen vampire spawn. And again, after the setup, you get a series of mini encounters that happens throughout the night as the party tries to stay barricaded up in whatever tavern or hostel that they're staying in. And they have to decide what to do when they see innocents being threatened outside, or when they hear cries of anguish from this side, and eventually what to do when the blizzard eventually picks up enough steam and essentially just drops a tornado on their shelter. And this encounter could probably take you an entire session to complete. Our next encounter is also horror-themed and is called Walker Stalker. It's for level 6 characters and was written by John Ciccolini with art by Siddharth Chaturvedi. In this encounter, we meet a ruthless merchant who was recently set upon by a group of berserkers, and he just threw some of his traveling companions off to the enemy so that he could just make a quick escape. And as is kind of wont to happen in Icewind Dale, in this dark place, they perished and then came back to life as Cold Light Walkers to seek vengeance on that merchant. So when the merchant then goes and hires a party to clear the roads out of town of that undead menace, there's a little bit more to the request than the party might realize. If the characters successfully complete this encounter, they're awarded the 10 Towns Medal, which is a magical item with stats included in the adventure. It is not, however, one of the hardware pieces included in this box. And finally, we have one called Lyra's Night, which is an encounter for any level that takes place at the Northlook Tavern in Bryn Shander or any tavern in Icewind Dale. And this encounter makes use of the Northlook Tavern pin here. This adventure was also written by John Ciccolini with art by Colin Boyer. In this encounter, the party stumbles on a festival celebrating the Lady of Joy, the god Lyra. And you're given a series of 4 events, including the Bear Toppler's Shove, the Angler's Dirge, Suicide Darts, and Korga's Chug. And I'm going to leave it to you to discover what each one of those entails, but there are rules included in the booklet for each one of those. And one great part about this encounter is that there's an entire page of competitors, including a whole other adventuring party that you can use in other parts of this adventure to spice things up. There's nothing like rivals to make the players up their game a little bit. And if they do happen to win one of these contests, they do get awarded the Northlook Tavern Champion pin here, featuring a Troutalope. This one uses a standard butterfly clasp, and a Troutalope with a mug of ale on a wooden shield is probably the most Icewind Dale thing ever. So while we're at it, let's take a look at the other 2 pieces of hardware included in this set. First, we have our Chardalyn Amulet over here. And this is worn by a group called the Black Swords, who have all come together over a shared interest, and it isn't badminton. Or is it? It's not. The party will encounter several NPCs who sport this amulet, though, so feel free to wear it yourself while you're portraying those particular characters. Next, we have a Shield Guardian amulet. Shield Guardians and their controlling amulets show up in quite a few adventures, so this is a piece that you can definitely reuse over time. This particular one shows up in the Lost Spire of Netherreal during Chapter 2. Finally, we have our little Chardalyn Dragon token, which is used in Chapter 4 to track the Chardalyn Dragon location during a particular encounter in that chapter. And while there is a mini for the Chardalyn Dragon sold separately, and you can see our review of that one by clicking that little eye in the corner of your screen. This token is 3 inches by 3 inches, so you can use it on your battle map as well to represent the dragon in lieu of that mini. And it feels like the quality just of all these pieces in general is just top-notch to me. And I might actually take to wearing this little Shield Guardian necklace. I've actually worn it around a couple of times, and I think it's quite nice, and it might spur some conversations the way I do when I kind of carry my Dungeons & Dragons books with me to the restaurant or wear a D&D t-shirt sometimes. So this is a nice piece. Now, speaking of the Chardalyn Dragon and his warpath, we also get some helpful game aids, including this page here with the dragon's warpath on one side and attack details on the back, which is a handy thing to have during that chapter. For something much more lighthearted, we also have the rules for Goat Ball, though admittedly they aren't terribly complicated. You just have everyone do an athletics and acrobatics check and then compare the totals for the two teams to see who won. But we have this as handy for you. In Chapter 5, the characters have to undergo several tests of the Frostmaiden, and the book has an image of a scorecard to keep track of how they perform, and here, Beadle & Grimm gives you your nice printed out version of that little scorecard to use. And this little pamphlet here has the actual rhyme of the Frostmaiden inside. Make sure it's right side up. It's not. There we go. And they can discover this in Chapter 5 of the adventure, and when they're armed with this poem, they can unlock some of Oriel's secrets. I'll leave that a little vague. This illustration here highlights an area that the players are going to visit in Chapter 2. And it's an area with a puzzle, obviously, and while the handout isn't completely necessary to solve the puzzle, obviously, it definitely helps them to imagine the scene that they're in. So there's runes carved into the various urns, and they do match the ones in the book. So if your players are well-versed enough to actually read giant runes, they'll be quite pleased with this image because they'll be able to read it. And the words carved into the wall are in Dwarvish up there. The set also includes an Adventurers League certificate that'll unlock a little Yeti-type companion for your games. They can be used as familiars or as a non-combat, non-mechanical friend to accompany you in your travels. I'm hiding the little code here, so I might use it myself one day. And finally, it's unrelated to Icewind Dale, but you can get unlock codes for Beadle and Grimm and their Giant's Bane Tavern skins, plus 7, I guess, gold chests to level them up in the Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms game. And this is for, of course, PC, Mac, lots of game systems, and mobile. So there you go. One of the best parts of every Beadle & Grimm's box are the in-world documents. When your players discover a note or a ledger or a diary or even read a newspaper in a game, you generally just have to relate it to them orally, whatever they're reading, which is completely fine. But when you can hand them a note on a piece of paper to let them pore over it themselves, that's even better. And when the paper looks like the in-world document and maybe even has some hidden clues on it or a puzzle, that's just the best. There is one improvement I'd like to see though for these Beadle & Grimm boxes. There's no easy way to know at a glance which document is which. They do describe some, but not all of the documents in their table of contents pamphlet, but what would make things easier is perhaps a visual guide to the documents with pictures of each one next to their description and where they show up in the story. So if you do have this box here, I'm gonna go through each of these documents now and give you that information. So you may wanna take a few notes of your own. Now, we already talked about the awesome in-world map by Devin Rue, so don't forget about that one. So first of all, we get 3 scrolls all wrapped up in twine. The small red one here we'll take a look at first. And here we go. So this arcane little scroll is a scroll of Tarrasque summoning, an item which the characters can discover in Chapter 7. It's actually just really gorgeous and a detailed piece of like arcane art. Now, if only we had a Tarrasque mini to summon with it. I don't know. Our next one here. By the way, when you undo these, you don't have to untie the twine. You can just scroll it up real nicely, get it tight in there, and then slide it right back in like that. So that way you don't have to untie it every time. Our next scroll here is a broadsheet for the town of Targos. Each one of the 10 towns gets its own in-world document to tease some story hooks and to provide you some flavor for each town, which is fantastic. Each of the 10 towns also has a main quest line for that town. And the Targos newspaper here teases it in the lower right-hand corner down there, where it talks about a local wilderness guide who's heading to Kelvin's Cairn, and you'll learn more about that later on. And of course, there's more information here about local personalities and establishments. Our next one over here has a really nice piece of texture paper. This one is basically a notice board for the town of Caer Dineval. And you can imagine it kind of being tacked up to the castle outside the Caer somewhere where the speaker lives, and people write on it about things that they need the town to know about. The main quest line in this town is only obliquely hinted at here, though, so you're going to have to discover that for yourself. Next one we have here, we're done with the scrolls, but this is a little letter from a fellow named Copper Knobberknocker, who's a gnome who the characters may meet in Bryn Shander. And he's worried about an old friend of his named Macretus, who is working on a device to try to end this everlasting winter that's plaguing the region. And when the characters go to investigate that in Chapter 2, they may stumble on this letter, which gives some background on Macretus. All right, our next one here is a little note from an awakened blind albino penguin named Kingsport. I gotta love D&D. Kingsport may waddle up to the PCs and pass this little note along to them, and who's going to deny a blind albino penguin some help? And this one was actually designed by our friend Michaela, so great job, Michaela. And you can use this in a lot of different adventures. All right, here we have, from the town of East Haven, a page from their newspaper, the East Haven Ledger. It talks about the frozen ferry service and a red wizard scheduled for execution by burning, among other things. Seems like East Haven is a pretty happening place. Next here we have the Bryn Shander Bulletin. This one has a nice callback to Storm King's Thunder, actually, with an article about a bandit known as the Weevil. There's also a fantastic ad that's basically a self-own from a less than stellar local blacksmith. That's kind of a running gag in the town. And there's several teases and hints about other quests that the PCs can undertake in Bryn Shander. Here we have a nice torn out page from a journal that the characters might find in Chapter 7 that should help them with a puzzle in room Y19M, which is the chamber of the Ebon Star in the Spire of Eriolarthus. Though honestly, that puzzle doesn't seem super difficult to me, so you may not even need this, but it's certainly nice to have a ready-made in-game clue to help the players if they do get stuck. And honestly, the puzzle could be a little bit more difficult if there isn't a wizard in the party, so it may depend on your party makeup. Next, we have the bi-weekly buzz from the town of Goodmead. And true to its name, there's all sorts of drink stains all over it, as you can see here. This broadsheet gives some important recent history with a long story about the recent murder of the town's speaker, Kendrick Reelsbarrow, I think his name is. There's also a little scribbled note on the back saying, "Beware the mark of the Blood Knight, 13 dead, they came with the storm." And if you remember back to our bonus encounters that we talked about, you'll know what this is referring to. All right. Here, we have a little notice that may be pinned to a board in one of the other of the 10 towns, pointing the party toward the town of Lonelywood, who is apparently in need of a moose expert. And if this doesn't lure your party to that main storyline in Lonelywood, I don't know what will. At the bottom is scribbled a little note as well. It says, "A man of a forgotten country comes whispering." So I'll leave that one for you to figure out. Here we have another broadsheet. Get it all opened up for you. This one is from the Tourmaline Gazette, with an extra Z in Gazette. The main story here is a call for mine safety improvements, and of course, dealing with the trouble in the mine is exactly what's in the cards for our players when they visit Tourmaline. There's also a story about the sacrifices to Auril that the town is making and how those compare to what other towns are doing in the region. And that's kind of a running theme in the adventure, these sacrifices to try to appease Auril. And we've got 3 more to go. This is another public notice. This one's for the town of Bremen. Only a few items to note on here. You've got a summons to the lake for some adventure and some treasure, and a notice that the town speaker seems to be missing, which is not the first time this has happened in the town of Bremen. And if you glance at the back of the notice down there, you may get a little hint about what awaits you when you visit the lake. And next we have a little note that's probably pinned to the outside wall of the Northern Light Tavern in Caer Konig. And it seems that someone has made off with the tavern's namesake, which is a magical lantern that used to hang above the door. And the town seems to have been beset by some sort of unseen thieves. And guess whose job it is to figure out that mystery? Hint, it's not Jessica Fletcher. And finally, we have one of the cooler documents. This one is a poster advertising a tourist spot in Dugan's Hold, the 20 Stones of Thrun, which is rather like Stonehenge, a group of kind of inexplicable standing stones arranged in a particular pattern for no discernible reason. And the only hint that they have to the purpose of it is a vague reference to an entity known as Thrun in some of the local ancient tomes, but no one really knows who or what Thrun is. If you do want a semi-official explanation of Thrun, you can dig up an old copy of Dungeon Magazine number 220, which features an adventure about him called, appropriately enough, King of the Wolves. And we'll throw a link to a digital version of the magazine down in the comment section down below. So these documents are always one of the highlights of the Beadle & Grimm's boxes, and this one does not disappoint. There's just a ton of them, filled with lore and lots of little details that I'm just going to leave you to discover on your own. But this may very well be one of the best set of documents that they produced so far, and I really appreciate that they invented a lot of them out of whole cloth, like the ones for the 10 towns, to further elaborate on those cities, and so you know what to do there and have some more flavor. Here we have a deck of 18 character secret cards. These are pulled right out of the book, but this way you don't have to rip a page out of your expensive hardcover book or the appendix booklet included in this set. And these little character secrets are designed to add a little suspicion and paranoia to your game. There are instructions included in Chapter 1 for you and your GM, but let me just kind of give you the lowdown. You can have your characters draw one or two of these cards at character creation, letting them weave together what the card says into their backstory. And some are relatively benign, like, you're a big fan of Drist, and you have a bit of cloth from one of his cloaks. Others are more impactful, like you're secretly a doppelganger. And there are several additional rules for these cards that are in the first chapter, and these really are designed for the GM's eyes only. So be sure, if you are the GM of your adventure, to check those out if you decide to use these cool little character secret cards. Speaking of minis, this set does include a set of 20 pre-painted minis. These are selected from the WizKids Icons of the Realms Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden booster box collection that released in September 2020. Normally, you have to buy these in random booster boxes, so the chances of getting the rare ones or the ones that you just really want may not be as high as you like. Or you have to buy them on the aftermarket where you're subject to fluctuating prices and supply. If you're not familiar with the Icons of the Realms releases, they sell them in those little booster boxes of 4 minis each, and they range in size from small to huge, and they're divided into rarities. You have commons and uncommons and rares. And the set included in the Beadle & Grimm's box here includes 9 out of the 12 rares. At the end of the video, we'll show you an up-close look at all the minis included in this Platinum box, along with their lore. This footage is going to be taken from our Icewind Dale full set review. If you'd like to see that original video in full, we'll have the link to it in the video description down below. Also included in the set is a digital code to unlock the Icewind Dale adventure on D&D Beyond. And if you already have it, you can certainly give that code to a friend. So let's talk about the Silver Edition. I don't have a Silver Edition box to show you, unfortunately, so we're just gonna have to talk about it. Remember that the Silver Edition box is significantly cheaper at $175, and it's not quite as simple as just being the Platinum Edition with a few things removed. So let me tell you first what's included in the Silver set, and then I'll tell you what's not. It has the printed adventure books, the GM screen, the handout maps of each of the 10 towns, the Rime of the Frostmaiden handout, the letter from Copper, the Help Me note, the Chardalyn token and amulet, the bonus encounters and the pre-gen characters, the little goat ball instructions, that little scorecard, all that half-page art that you can hang over your GM screen, all 10 of those town broadsheets and notice pages, that one page of bonus art for the puzzle room, and that little map and timeline that's used for that dragon rampage through Icewind Dale in Chapter 4. There are 40 out of the 60 encounter cards, and as for the maps, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So some of the maps are included, but the quality isn't going to be quite as nice. Instead of coming with that separate big old poster tube, they're going to be folded up and put in the box. The Silver set includes the map of Aurel's throne room, the 2 Cave of Hunger maps, and the map of Eriolarthus' study. And you also get the big maps of Icewind Dale and the Necropolis, but for the Silver box, they're just folded paper instead of that rolled up canvas. But they are the same size. And the map that came with all those little boxes of the 10 towns, it's going to be on the back of your Icewind Dale map, just like in the official book, instead of being broken out as its own thing. Okay, so what's missing from the Silver Edition? The minis, obviously, and the other hardware pieces like the Arcane Brotherhood pen, the Shield Guardian amulet, and the Knucklehead Troutalope pen. The map tiles aren't there. The 6 maps of Zardarok's Fortress, Devon Ruse and World Map of the 10 Towns, the notes from the Chamber of the Ebon Star that give you the hint about that puzzle, the Scroll of Tarask Summoning, the character secret cards, the D&D Beyond code, the Adventurers League code, and the Idle Champions loot. So the Silver Box actually has more than I expected it to, and it's probably going to be the sweet spot for most players. $175 is certainly more accessible to folks than $500. And best of all, it's still actually available for purchase. We'll throw a link to it in the video description down below. I know it's a bit complicated to work out exactly how the 2 boxes compare, so feel free to use that comment section down below if you have any questions. I had to bounce some of my own questions back off from the Beadle Grimm staff a couple of times just till I wrapped my own head around it. So do be aware that they did a rather limited run of the Silver Edition, so if you are interested in picking it up, I wouldn't dally too long because they could sell out. There might be a reprint later on if demand is high enough, but they haven't really made any promises. So let me know what you think of the Beadle Grimm set in the comment section down below. To me, it felt like this set really tried to focus on the bread and butter pieces that make Beadle Grimm's boxes so great. The maps, the handouts, the hardware, the bonus encounters, and the pre-gen characters. And this set didn't really include anything too crazy, like a plushie, though they do sell the Yeti Tyke plushie here separately. So if you do want your own Yeti Tyke, you can go to the Beadle Grimm store and pick one up for yourself. I'm kind of two minds about the inclusion of the minis. On the one hand, having these minis certainly improves your Icewind Dale adventures. They're actually a really key component, especially if you already have all those maps to use them on. But it is a product that's readily available outside of the Special Edition box. And there aren't really any special tweaks to them like they did with the War Machine back in the Avernus Platinum set. Maybe it would have been interesting if they could have gotten maybe some variant paint jobs for the minis just to make them a little bit more special. But let me know what you think. Do you like having a selection of minis included in the Platinum boxes? Do you want to see other items, something else going forward? What would you like to see? And what's been your favorite Beadle Grimm set so far? Let's discuss. And don't forget, if you do want to see each of the 20 included minis up close with lore information, stay tuned to the end of this video for that. Or check out our full case review of the WizKids Icons of the Realms Icewind Dale set by clicking that little eye up in the corner of your screen there. And we actually just received our legendary edition of Curse of Strahd from Beadle Grimm's a couple of days ago. It's still safely packed up because as we're filming this, we are moving out of this house later today and we won't be settled into our new one for a couple of weeks. So you'll be seeing our Beadle Grimm's Strahd box review sometime in mid to late January, but we'll get it out to you as soon as we possibly can. Let me again thank Beadle Grimm's for sending us the set to review with you. We also want to thank our sponsors for this video. First, the Deck of Mini and their Big Bad Booklet series. If you're looking for flavorful, creative, and fun little 5e adventures to run with your friends and your family and your gaming group, you cannot go wrong with the Big Bad Booklet series. Each month you receive basically a comic book with a new adventure focused on a new big bad each time. There's new lore, new stat blocks, new magical items, story hooks, custom art, and just everything you need to run the adventure. And they also include a little art print of the monster and Deck of Mini reference cards to help you run it. This month, come meet Captain Fulmini, a vampire who can harness the power of the high seas with an unquenchable thirst for revenge. Beware the ship with the blood-stained sails, landlubbers. It may be the last thing you ever see. Will you walk the plank, or can you knock Captain Fulmini's plans off course? Learn more and subscribe today at bigbads.com. And of course, thank you for watching today. I really appreciate you sticking through with me all the way to the end here, or almost to the end. So I had my last day of work just a couple of days ago, and now I'm officially working full-time on the Gallant Goblin. I'm going to try to bring you more content at a higher quality level in 2021. If you want to help me do that, there's a couple of things you can do that would just mean an awful lot to me. First, check out our sponsors at the Big Bad Booklet and Deck of Mini and Roll for Combat. And if you have a chance, just let them know that you heard about them from us, the Gallant Goblin. You can also click the little like buttons below our videos, subscribe to the channel, and share our videos with people who you think would enjoy them. And you can leave us comments. Your kind words and all your support down there is what really keeps me going when I get really tired and burnt out. And if you or someone you know wants to sponsor some videos, we're soon going to have a really easy way for them to learn exactly how to do that. So stay tuned for that. All that said, the most important thing you can do is to stay safe and healthy. Have a wonderful holiday season, have fun, love each other, and I'll see you next time at the Gallant Goblin. Now wait, stay tuned for some minis here. I'll see you next time. Twingas are elemental spirits that first appeared in 5th edition on Chult and Tomb of Annihilation. They're associated with both plants and natural matter like rocks, ice, and snow. They're fascinated by humanoids, though, and will offer charms that confer supernatural effects if treated well by one. They have a challenge rating of 0 and no attacks. In Icewind Dale, however, it's possible for their charms to have negative effects if they're encountered during unnatural environmental conditions like magically summoned blizzards. They may be cute, but you underestimate a Yeti tyke at your own peril. These baby Yetis are 1 to 7 years old, and the children of the fearsome Yeti, or abominable Yeti. The book notes that while they can be intimidated by larger creatures, they're extremely hard to tame, and simply adult Yetis in a tiny, cute body. They can camouflage in snow and attack with their claws, having a CR of 1/8. They appear in Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. Many orcs live in the Icewind Dale region, and their raids on settlements in the area was one of the reasons the 10 towns formed in the first place, building up the large town of Bryn Shander into a hilltop stronghold to defend the region and serve as a refuge of last resort. Orcs don't seem to feature prominently in the adventure, and there are no new stat blocks, but there is at least one wilderness encounter featuring orcs from the Many Arrows tribe, and this figure could be used to represent their war chief. The Orog and other relevant orc stat blocks can be found in the Monster Manual, though the race was further explored in Volo's Guide to Monsters. Goliaths do feature prominently in Rime of the Frostmaiden, so this could be used to represent NPCs, but Goliaths have been a playable race since the Elemental Evil Player's Companion, and that information is reproduced in Rime's appendix. If you travel to the spine of the world, the Sky Tower clan and the Wormdoom clan are rival Goliath clans there, and the book includes a CR3 Goliath warrior stat block wielding a great axe and javelins. We previously got a Night Hag mini in a different pose in the Storm King's Thunder set, and the Descent into Avernus set had Mad Maggie, but both sculpts were rare, making this uncommon figure your best bet for getting a traditional-looking Night Hag. You may want multiple ones too, as you'll meet a coven of 3 Night Hags in the Rime of the Frostmaiden adventure. You can find Night Hag stats in the Monster Manual with a CR of 5 by itself or 7 in a coven. They also appear in Curse of Strahd, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Descent into Avernus, and Tomb of Annihilation, as well as in the Eberron and Theros settings. Crag cats are also known as hunters of men, and they prowl the mountains in search of humanoids, preferring them over other prey. However, the book mentions they can sometimes be found with cubs, and the babies are probably adorable. They have a CR1 stat block in Rime of the Frostmaiden, but have an interesting trait that allows them to turn spells that target them back on the caster. It's not clear from the lore why exactly, but it certainly makes for an interesting first impression with those casters who love their eldritch blasts and firebolts. Unlike other were creatures, werebears are generally good and able to control their curse. Characters can run into generic Goliath werebears while exploring the northern wilderness, and they're happy to act as guides or assist in other ways for free. Oyamanartok, sounds like a Klingon to me, is a progenitor of other Goliath werebears, and she only transforms other Goliaths into werebears if they prove to be good and worthy. Goliath werebears are CR8 creatures in Rime of the Frostmaiden. Someone on the writing team really likes the word galumph, as both Goliath werebears and snowy owlbears are described as galumphing across the tundra. In any case, snowy owlbears use the stat blocks of the regular owlbear, but with a swimming speed of 30 feet. And of course, the bear part of them is a polar bear rather than an owlbear bear. They will eat humanoids but prefer wild game, so if you feed it and are nice to it, well, the words party mascot are in the book. I recommend, of course, that you name your snowy owlbear Barry Mana Snow. The abominable Yeti is larger than a regular Yeti and much more dangerous, with an added cold breath attack. They are ever hungry, and while they typically stay away from civilization, they're more than willing to attack if their natural food sources or nearby herds dwindle. Their stat block is in the monster manual with a CR of 9. Abominable Yetis appear in Dungeon of the Mad Maid, Storm King's Thunder, Arctic Encounter Tables, and Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and Rime of the Frostmaiden. Frost salamanders are elementals from the elemental plane of ice. They're detailed in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, which explains they end up on the material plane by wandering through the planar gates. They enjoy digging and burrowing, carving out massive caves that travelers can stop to rest in, not realizing they've actually been lured into a trap. The salamander then pounces, and it doesn't even have to pay a food delivery fee. They may be tamed by frost giants to help them construct outposts. They have a CR of 9. Here we get our first rare, and appropriately, it's also the first form of Auriel, goddess of cold and winter. In Rime of the Frostmaiden, Auriel is casting a spell that traps the north in eternal winter. Players will eventually have to confront her. Those who wish to fight her will have to fight all 3 of her forms. The cold crone, also seen on the cover of the book, is her first form. It has a challenge rating of 9, reflecting her weakened state due to the strain of casting her spell on the region. The Brittle Maiden is Auriel's second form. The mini may appear to be quite big for its base, and that's because the creature is actually large-sized in the book. As you'd expect from a deity, all 3 of Auriel's forms have legendary resistances and legendary actions, as well as lair actions. Each form has different abilities, with the Cold Crone attacking with talons, while the Brittle Maiden has many ice-based attacks. The fight escalates in difficulty, with the Brittle Maiden having a CR of 10. Auriel's third and final form is called either Winter's Womb or the Queen of Frozen Tears, and its size is supposed to be small. To paraphrase Christopher Perkins, the idea is that you're fighting Auriel backwards in time, first as the old crone, then as the maiden, and now here as basically a winter diamond holding her divine spark. This is her most primal and dangerous form, with a CR of 11. Okay, if you've made it this far, presumably you don't mind spoilers too much, but let's just make it clear that there will be some spoilers when discussing all these named NPCs in the set. Zardarak is notable as a Duragar for leading his clan out of the Underdark to settle the surface. Characters may meet his sons early in the adventure, creating a hook that leads to the discovery of his plan to... No, I'm not going to give this particular spoiler. He can enlarge himself, so it's too bad there isn't a large-sized version of him. There are enlarged Duragar minis in the Pathfinder Battles City of Lost Omens set, but they don't really look like him. Zardarak has a CR of 5. The adventure features 4 wizards from the Arcane Brotherhood racing to be the first to rediscover ancient magical artifacts. Nass is the least qualified among them, having lied her way into the ranks of her more powerful colleagues. The Arctic Weasel on her shoulder is her familiar and not a regular animal. While I'm not one to question such a nice-looking mini as this, there's actually no opportunity to meet Nass in this form, though you can use the mini to stand in for her actual appearance. Only one of the Arcane Brotherhood characters lacks a mini in this set. He's a Red Wizard of Thay, though he often disguises himself, so you can represent him with any bundled-up spellcaster mini, or the Red Wizard mini from the Tyranny of Dragons set. Nass, when you do meet her, has a CR of 6. Avarice is another wizard from the Arcane Brotherhood. She has a Raven familiar and also travels with 2 gargoyles. She's not a very nice person, and she's highly paranoid. She makes an uneasy ally at best should the party team up with her, and she'll try to keep herself out of harm's way as much as possible. She specializes in evocation magic and has a CR of 7. As if gnolls aren't bad enough normally, Rime of the Frostmaiden introduces gnoll vampires. Unlike most vampires, gnoll vampires aren't created by other vampires. Instead, they arise when a regular gnoll hungers for flesh and blood so much in life that it rises from the dead to continue eating. Tekalili is one such gnoll vampire who stalks the party during the climactic section of the adventure, and can be quite a pain in the neck. Get it? Pain in the neck? Anyway, no vampires have a CR of 8. Valen Harpel thanks you for being a friend. Travel down the road and defeated a dragon. Wait, you're telling me this isn't B. Arthur with an eye patch? Oof, missed opportunity. Anyway, that said, Valen rounds out our Arcane Brotherhood bunch, and she's an unscrupulous but super fun NPC who can tag along with the party for a while, offering her assistance at critical junctures of the story with a clear explanation that the characters will owe her a favor. She's accompanied by a cadre of kobolds, including a couple of zombie ones, and she's overall just the best. She has a CR of 4. And finally, our capstone mini, the Frost Giant Skeleton. As you might expect, these are dead Frost Giants reanimated through necromancy. There's a mysterious area in the north with a ring of giant-sized thrones that might be haunted. You'll also encounter these skeletons in the final section of the adventure. Rime the Frostmaiden introduces the new Frost Giant Skeleton stat block, which has a CR of 6.